first night she set foot in his camp, the giant Apache woman stood trembling in the dark. It was not because she was afraid of him. It was because no one had ever treated her kindly in all her life. What frightened her most was not this stranger's size or his gun, but the quiet gentleness in the way he spoke. It had all started with a scrap of paper no bigger than a man's palm, the kind folks called a mail-order bride notice. In Arizona back then, many men who lived alone on hard, empty land looked for wives by sending letters up to the big cities, where women were desperate to escape poverty, arranged matches, or a lifetime in other people's kitchens. But Jackson Hale had not been looking for a wife. He wanted a companion, a voice in the house, a presence so the rooms would not echo after his mother died, and the loneliness began to gnaw at his mind. He wrote a plain, awkward letter, asked an acquaintance to post it, then almost forgot it existed. 3 months later, a dust-covered stagecoach pulled up on the red earth, and a woman stepped down. No one in the town of Copper Bend had ever seen a woman like her. She was taller than the coach door, shoulders broad, hands strong, muscles clear under the heavy cloth of her dress. When she climbed down, the ground under her boots seemed to give just a little. She searched the street for him, her gaze sharp and unsteady at once, like a wounded deer that no longer trusts anyone. "You are Jackson Hale?" she asked, her voice so deep a few children nearby backed away. Jackson stood still and looked at her for a long moment. He was tall, strong, the kind of man who had already seen some miles. Yet next to this woman, he looked like a sapling beside a rock face. "I am Jackson," he said. "And you are?" "Tala," she answered. "Then I came because of your letter." Jackson went still for a few heartbeats. He had never imagined that the one to answer his letter would be an Apache woman, nor that she would be so large she made 3 freight cowboys at the hitching rail swallow hard. Yet what held his attention was not her size. It was her eyes. They were the eyes of someone who had spent far too many years in fear and far too few in any kind of peace. He reached out to take her bag for her, but Tala stepped back half a pace, with the quick, automatic motion of someone who had been handled badly too long. Jackson let his hand fall at once. He had no wish to make her feel cornered. "It is all right. I was only trying to help," he said quietly. She looked at him, and something flickered in her eyes, but she still did not let him touch a single thing that belonged to her. The road out to Jackson's camp was long and windy. He walked ahead. Tala followed behind, her stride slow and wary, as if every dry leaf the wind tossed across the ground might be the sign of some new danger. Jackson's place was small but clean and orderly. One low-roofed house, one fire in the hearth, one porch looking out over the rolling hills. When he lit the lamp, warm light fell across Tala's face. Instead of relaxing, she shivered. She stopped right in the doorway, fingers locked together. Jackson saw at once that it was not the cold that made her shake. It was the simple fact that she could not quite believe anyone meant to be kind. He spoke softly, the way a man talks to a wild creature that has been hunted too long. "You can sit anywhere you like. This is your home for as long as you choose to stay." Tala did not step in right away. She reached out and brushed her fingertips along the wooden doorframe, as if she needed to make sure it would not vanish the moment she crossed it. Behind her, Jackson saw something he would not fully understand until much later. Tala was not afraid of the dark, nor of men, nor of the land itself. What she feared most was gentleness, because no one had ever taught her how to receive it. And that was the moment fate quietly set in motion the softest story Copper Bend would ever tell. When Tala stepped into Jackson's small cabin, she had to duck low because the doorframe barely reached her chest. The place smelled of pine, dry earth, and a faint trace of mint tea hanging in the air, all of it strange to her. Among her own Apache people, they rarely stayed inside tight walls, so every creak of the floorboards made that enormous body flinch and stiffen. Jackson noticed her tension at once. He did not say anything that might rattle her further. He simply moved slowly, the way a man does around a wounded horse, careful not to make extra noise. She stopped near the kitchen table, her wide shoulders blocking almost all the late afternoon light that came in through the window. Jackson set a kettle on the stove, glancing over at her a few times. "If you like, you can sit," he said, in a voice light as a breeze. Tala looked at the small chair. One try from her, and it might snap clean in two. Jackson understood immediately and pulled out a big wooden crate he usually used for firewood. "This one might suit you better." Tala looked at him. She did not smile, yet something in her eyes softened. At least he was not making fun of her. That was rare in her life. When the tea began to steam, Jackson poured it into 2 stoneware cups and held one out to her. "Drink. It will warm you up. You have been on the road a long way." Tala stared at the cup as if it were some strange object. No one in her life had ever handed her something to drink with a hand that trembled slightly. Not from fear of her, but from the worry of not being polite enough. She hesitated, then took it. Her hand was so large it nearly swallowed the cup. Jackson sat a few steps away, far enough not to corner her. "How far have you come?" he asked. Tala was silent for a while. 3 days, not much food. "Are you hungry?" Tala nodded once. Jackson stood, lifted the lid on a pot of stew still hot on the stove, and ladled out a portion big enough for 2 grown men. He set the bowl in front of her. He did not say much. He did not stare. He did not act as if her size were something to gawk at. Tala stole another look at him. "You are not afraid of me?" Jackson answered as if she had asked an ordinary question. "You are tired. Tired people are not frightening." Tala chewed slowly. The hot food loosened something tight in her throat. Then a sentence slipped out before she could stop it. "Where I grew up, people only spoke to me to give orders or to laugh at me. No one ever asked if I was hungry." Jackson looked at her for a little longer this time. There was no pity in his eyes, only a very real concern. "Here," he said. "No one needs permission to be treated kindly." Tala set the spoon down. Her heart pounded harder. This was what she feared most. Not fists, not knives, but this. Gentleness. Patience. Care that did not demand anything in return. All her life, people had only ever wanted her strength. No one had wanted her heart. Yet Jackson was treating her like someone trying to catch her breath again. After a while, when the meal was done, Jackson got up and nodded toward the small room on the right. "You can sleep in there. The bed will not be long enough, but I will lay extra hides and blankets on the floor to give you more space." Tala looked at the dark doorway. "I am used to sleeping outside." Jackson smiled just a little. "Then leave the door open so the wind can come in. No one will hurt you here." She did not know why that sentence made her throat tighten. She turned away so he would not see the way her eyes burned. For the first time in many years, she felt she did not have to wear all her armor at once. That night, Tala lay on her side on the pile of furs Jackson had spread out. The door stood ajar so the forest wind could slip through. Jackson slept in the next room. She could hear him turn over now and then, each movement quiet, as if he were afraid of waking her. She watched the moonlight tilt across the edge of the window and wondered if a life without fear truly existed anywhere. And in that exact moment, for the first time in a very long time, she felt she was not entirely alone. The next morning, Jackson was up early, same as always. He built up the fire, set water on to boil, measured out cornmeal for mush. While his hands worked, his eyes kept sliding toward the bedroom door, waiting to see if Tala stirred. He figured she would come out stiff and distant, the way she had been the night before. Or maybe she would slip out fast, trying to get outside before anyone noticed her. Instead, when the door finally opened, Tala stepped out lighter than he expected. She was still enormous, still a shadow that filled half the kitchen, but her face was not pulled so tight. She stood in the doorway for a long moment, like she was waiting for permission. Jackson smiled. "Come on in. There's nothing here to be afraid of." Tala walked in, her shoulders still turned a little, the way people do when they are used to defending themselves. "I am not afraid," she said softly, then dipped her head a little. "I am just not used to it." "Not used to what?" Jackson asked, stirring the cornmeal so it would not scorch. "Not used to someone asking me to sit," she answered, so honestly that Jackson's chest pulled tight. He set the pot aside and nodded toward the table. "Sit down then. A body that size ought not to be standing around like a lost deer all morning." Tala startled at the words, but instead of taking offense, she let out the smallest smile, quick and shy. And for the first time, Jackson saw her features soften. She sat on the chair he had quietly reinforced the night before. He had nailed on 2 extra braces, just in case the old wood decided to give up. "This chair is different," Tala said. "Yeah, I fixed it up a little," Jackson muttered, turning away so she would not see the faint color in his face. "House is made of lumber, not people." Tala lowered her eyes, hiding another tiny smile. "Thank you." She said those 2 words in a low, rough voice, maybe from crying on the long train ride, maybe from a lifetime of not having many chances to say them. Jackson brought the bowl of cornmeal mush and set it in front of her. "Eat. You need your strength." Tala looked at the bowl as if it were something unfamiliar. "I hardly ever eat first," she said. Jackson tilted his head. "What do you mean?" "In the village, elders eat first, children after, the strong ones eat last." Jackson glanced at the thick muscles along her arms, then spoke slowly. "Here, strong or weak, we eat at the same time, and I'm not letting you skip meals." Tala picked up the spoon, her hand so big it made the spoon look like a toy. She ate slowly, very slowly, as if she were trying to understand something new that had appeared in her life. "The mush is warm," she murmured. "Warmer than I remember food being." Jackson pulled out a chair and sat down across from her. "You can stay here as long as you want. I am not asking anything from you. No one is going to lay a hand on you. No one is going to tell you what you have to do. You decide what you want." Tala lifted her head. The eyes of someone who had lived through war, hunger, and fear were suddenly filled with something he did not expect. Doubt. Not because she did not believe him, but because she had never believed a life like that was possible. Her voice fell to almost nothing. "Why, are you kind to me?" Jackson was quiet for a while. He looked at her hands, the long calluses, the pale scars, the marks of someone who had not grown up in peace. Then he answered, very gently, "Because somebody has to be the first one to treat you well, so you can learn you deserve it." Tala did not reply. She bent her head over the bowl. Her huge fingers tightened so hard around the spoon that the metal bent just a little. Not from anger, from not knowing what to do with that kind of kindness. Gentleness was what she feared most, and the thing she feared most was always the thing she most deeply wanted. After breakfast, Tala stood, looked slowly around the cabin, and said something that stopped Jackson cold. "I want to work. What should I do?" Where she came from, being allowed to exist always came with a price. You had to prove your worth. Jackson shook his head. "Not yet. You just got here. You need to rest." "I am strong. I do not need rest," Tala frowned. "I know you are strong," Jackson said. "But strong folks need to let their hearts rest too, not just their bodies." Tala froze. That sentence slid into her like a quiet arrow, straight through the armor she had been wearing since she was a child. She walked out onto the porch and looked toward the hills and the pines. Jackson followed her. "If you want to do something, do it," he said. "But not because you think you owe me. You do not owe me anything." Tala looked at him, really looked at him, as if he were something impossible. "No one has ever said that to me." Jackson nodded slowly. "Well, someone has now." And that was the morning when everything began to change. Not because he made her feel safe all at once, but because, for the first time in her life, Tala felt something else stirring inside her. Something just as strong as her body, but never given a chance to wake. She did not know what to call it yet. Jackson did. She was learning a language no one had ever taught her before. The language of gentleness. The morning after that first panic, the air on the ranch felt different in a way they both sensed, but neither put into words. Sunlight slid along the new fence rails. Red dust floated under the horses' hooves. The long call of the rooster made everything look calmer than the night before. Inside Tala's chest, there was still a storm. From the moment Jackson wrapped an arm around her shoulders to keep her on her feet, then whispered that she was safe, something inside her had slammed hard like a hammer. It had not hurt, but it had thrown her off balance in a way no battle ever had. Tala was not used to anyone standing beside her without wanting to use her or order her around. She was even less used to a man looking at her with no fear in his eyes. Her life had been made of long days on the move between rough lands, nights falling asleep sitting up after leading people away from soldiers, evenings spent bracing her shoulders against the wind so the children of her band could sleep. No one had ever looked at her as anything but a fighter, a giant, a shield. No one had ever seen her as what she also was, a woman trying to stand upright in a world that was far too harsh. Jackson was different. He did everything slowly but surely, careful without being cautious of her. That morning, while he scattered feed for the chickens, he only asked one soft question. "Did you get any sleep at all last night?" Tala leaned in the doorway. The frame looked small beside her size. "A little," she answered. Jackson knew that was not true, but he only nodded and went back to his work. He did not push, did not prod. It was exactly that warm silence that made Tala feel awkward. Up until now, men were quiet around her only when they were afraid of her. Jackson's quiet was different. It felt like someone pulling out a place for her by the fire and leaving it empty, waiting, even if she had not yet dared to sit down. When they went out to fix the fence, Tala lifted each long rail on her own. Jackson measured and hammered. He no longer seemed surprised by her strength. He just watched, then smiled a little, as if it were the most natural thing in the world. "I had a fellow help me with this once," Jackson said lightly. "He was not half as strong as you." Tala glanced at him, her voice low. "I am used to heavy work." "No," Jackson said, still easy. "You are used to being alone." The words stopped her for a heartbeat. She did not like being seen through, but his eyes did not carry judgment. He was simply telling her what he saw, then handing it back to her like something she could decide what to do with. No threat, no accusation, just truth. That afternoon, when she carried a full bucket up from the well, Jackson laid a hand on the side of the handle to take some of the weight. Heat from his fingers brushed her knuckles. She flinched just a little. "You do not have to do everything," he said. "I have always done everything," Tala answered. "But you are not alone anymore," he said quietly, almost as if he was afraid of scaring her more. She went rigid, not because she disliked what he said, but because it hit the weakest place in her, the place where she had buried all the losses of her people, the faces of those she had sworn to protect and had not been able to save. She could not afford to be soft, could not risk anyone seeing her shake again. Jackson seemed to understand the defense in every breath she took. He did not step closer. He just stayed where he was, close enough that she knew he had not walked away, far enough that she did not feel trapped. By sunset, they sat under the porch roof, eating a simple supper of salt meat and roasted potatoes. Jackson ate slowly. Tala swallowed fast, the way of someone who had learned never to show how badly she needed a decent meal. "You do not have to eat so fast," Jackson said gently. "No one here is going to snatch that plate from you." Tala set her spoon down, her shoulders sinking a little. "I am not used to anyone saying that," she admitted. "Then you can start getting used to it," Jackson smiled. She looked at him longer than usual. In her eyes there was something more than gratitude, something larger that she did not yet have a name for. That night, when Jackson lit the lamp inside and told her she could sleep in the front room if she wanted, Tala stayed in the doorway, one hand on the frame. "I will still sleep on the porch," she said. "You do not have to be afraid of me," Jackson replied. Tala met his gaze, her big dark eyes much too sad for a body that strong. "I am not afraid of you," she said slowly. "I am afraid that if I get used to this kindness and one day it disappears, I will not know how to go on." Jackson did not move toward her, did not drown her in comfort she might not trust. He only tipped his head slightly, the way people speak without words, and that silence made her feel safer than any locked door could. Before she turned away, he added one line, "I am not going anywhere. If you want to believe that, I will sit on this step every night until you see it for yourself." Tala walked out to the porch, but her heart stayed behind for a moment longer. And that night, for the first time in many wandering years, she slept more deeply. Not because the world outside was suddenly gentle, but because there was a man sitting quietly on the front step, keeping his promise with nothing more than his steady, ordinary calm. Spring came late to the red hills. Snow melted in thin patches. New grass showed up in shy little clumps. The wind still carried enough cold that folks pulled their coats tight every evening. Out on Jackson's ranch, spring did not begin with the weather. It began with the way Tala started to change. She no longer stood guard at the door every night, as if someone might take away this strange new freedom. She no longer flinched when her hand brushed Jackson's by accident. She no longer jerked like a startled animal when he called her name from behind. The old fears were healing the way long scratches do, slowly, a little at a time. There was no miracle, only the steady patience of a man who understood that real strength is not who swings an axe hardest, but who can be gentle enough not to bruise a heart that has already been thrown away too many times. One afternoon, while Jackson was setting posts for a new fence, he heard footsteps behind him. Normally, Tala walked like the ground could not stop her. Today, her steps were light, uncertain. She stood there for a long moment before she spoke. So quietly, he had to stop working to hear her. "Jackson, can I ask you something?" He wiped his hands on his jeans and turned, smiling like he always did when she said his name. "You can ask me anything." Tala stared down at the dirt, big fingers knotting together. "If one day I trust you enough, and trust this place enough, would you let me stay longer?" The question was clumsy, but so honest that Jackson could not answer right away. He stepped closer, slowly, and lifted his eyes to her face, to the battle she was fighting just to stand there and ask. "Tala, you can stay as long as you want," he said. "This is your home." She drew in a deep breath, like someone hearing something she had waited for since childhood, but never dared to say aloud. "You are not afraid of me," she whispered. Jackson laid his hand over hers. His hand was much smaller than hers, but steady. "I am more afraid of hurting you," he said, "than I am of you ever hurting me." Tala went completely still. No one had ever said words like that to her. Not her father, not the men of her old village, not the men who had put her on a train like a piece of freight. She had heard men demand, threaten, command, but never admit they feared causing her pain. That night, when Jackson came out onto the porch, he found Tala sitting there, wrapped in the blanket he had given her that first month. This time she did not seem to be hiding from the cold. She held the blanket the way someone holds on to something that has begun to mean mine. Jackson sat down beside her, close enough to share the quiet, far enough not to crowd her. For a long while they simply listened to the wind in the scrub and the soft creak of the porch boards. Then Tala spoke, her voice barely louder than the night. "Jackson, the men where you come from, when they love someone, how do they say it?" He thought for a moment, his voice low and rough as evening pine. "Most of them say it with what they do, not with words." She turned her head, watching him. "And you? What would you do?" Jackson shifted so he could look her in the eye, his gaze unhurried. "Sure. I will not demand anything from you. I will not touch you when you are afraid. I will not step closer when you are backing away," he said. "But if one day you take half a step toward me, even half, I will take the other half." Tala's heart kicked against her ribs like a drum at a festival back home, loud, wild, strangely warm. "I am practicing my half step," she murmured. Jackson smiled then, a real spring smile she had not seen all winter. He slowly held out his hand. "I am right here. There is no need to rush." Tala placed her large hand in his. Her fingers trembled, but she did not pull away. Jackson closed his hand around hers, gently, just enough to let her feel him there. If she chose to run, he would let go. If she chose to stand still, he would stand there with her for as long as it took. And that was when spring truly began on that little ranch. Not in the flowers, not in the grass, but in the moment a giant Apache woman who had once been traded like a thing dared to lay a piece of her heart in the palm of the first man who knew how to hold it softly. Some stories in the West do not need gunfire or wild adventures. They only need a bit of softness at the right moment, a hand that knows how to wait, and a heart big enough that no one has to feel small. The story of Tala, the giant Apache bride from a mail-order letter, and Jackson Hale, the cowboy who chose patience over pride, is one of those. Two people who seem to have nothing in common and yet somehow found each other through the softest things in life. A quiet meal, an unintentional touch, evenings standing side by side watching the sun go down without needing any words. If the West teaches us anything, it is this. Sometimes love does not arrive like lightning or fate. It comes from patience and simple kindness given to each other day after day. And if a woman who once feared gentleness can find a place to rest her heart, then maybe every one of us still has that kind of hope. If tonight's story made your own heart soften even a little, hit subscribe and stay with me. Week after week, we will keep meeting more Western souls who have loved, have lost, and have found themselves again in the most unexpected ways.